Alright guys, about the situation on the front lines, as you know, good news, Ukraine is now liberating quarter by quarter of Volchansk city. Russia tried to get it under control 1.5 months ago, but now Ukraine sent more reinforcements and our guys successfully liberating the land. Well, the tendency is good, but there is a big problem. Russia started to use more of the aviation bombs, including FAB 3000, hitting Ukrainian positions, so our guys sometimes have to leave the area because after FAB 3000 strike, the positions do not exist any longer. Just imagine 3000 kilos of TNT. It's crazy. And there is definitely a confirmation in two of the areas that Russia has used those gliding aviation bombs. And here we have the result of the FAB 3000 operation. It completely demolished the half of the building in Volchansk. Well, I just hope that Ukraine will be able to continue with the same pace, because now it's very hard for our guys to keep the positions in Volchansk. And according to, let's say, internal data, some of our guys had to leave the positions. Again, because positions do not exist any longer. So we are all waiting for F-16s, a game changer for this specific threat from Russia, gliding aviation bombs. Those airplanes will minimize the threat. And as you see, the Russian forces are still trapped in the factory of Volchansk. Now for them it's even harder to reach their positions because they moved by Ukraine. Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Nevertheless, Ukraine also continued to use its gliding bombs JDAMs delivered to Ukraine by the United States of America and also rocket artillery systems as HIMARS. I can show you some of the screenshots from the Russian positions being targeted by Ukraine. And here we go with a big Russian base and JDAMs. My friends, if you like the job that I do daily on YouTube, you may consider subscribing for my Patreon page. You may find it in the video description just below. Thank you so much for your kind support and motivation. Russians confirmed the daily strikes on Crimea, Krasnodarsky Krai and Rostov Oblast. They even publishes this map. Well, mostly here Ukraine is using UAVs for those strikes, but also the drone boats. At least 6 of those were spotted in the northern part of Crimea. Well, we may definitely say that the air defense of the Russian army in Crimea is much better compared to on their own territory in Krasnodar. They claim to be using their Navy aviation to shut down Ukrainian drones. But sometimes Russia is losing its Navy aviation. For example, this K-29 helicopter somehow crashed during performing its mission, maybe against the drone boats. Well, we already saw some of the images of how Ukraine equips the drone boats with the air defense missiles. Well, it is better to say the air-to-air missiles. As far as I remember, this is R-73, the missile which is usually mounted on the fighter jets to conquer the enemy aircraft, and maybe some sort of the drone boat launched the same missile to target the Russian K-29 helicopter, which is mostly used by Russia for surveillance missions and also to hit those kind of the drone boats. And we know that recently they moved with more air defense systems to Crimea, which are obviously good targets for attacking, so I expect those attacks to continue. For example, today there was the strike on the Russian ammunition depot in Rostov-on-Don. A single drone strike caused a chain reaction and massive detonation of the shells, so this warehouse is no-go any longer. About the Yeysk Russian military airfield that was attacked yesterday, definitely the strike was confirmed by this low-quality satellite image. We see the grass burned there because of the fire. The fire was caused by the strike. But there are no any details of what particular was hit out there. Probably the air defense very close to the airfield. At least there were reports about it, but with this low quality satellite image I cannot confirm that. Guys, we have absolutely great news for Ukrainian air defense. Netherlands will transfer one system to Ukrainian army as well as one unknown country. System is not a track. The system includes radar control center and many of the launchers, up to 8. And now let's count. Ukraine will obtain one system from Germany, one from the United States, Romania, Netherlands, unknown country, 5. Plus Ukraine already has 2 of the systems. Yes, Ukraine lost some of the launchers. They were hit by the Russian Iskander missiles, but later on Germany supplied new launchers to Ukraine, so it means fully capable at least 7 of the systems will be in Ukraine. It is absolutely great. Yeah, obviously Ukraine would need around 20 of those to protect all of its territory, but 7 would be enough to protect the military airfields. The basis for F-16s, which are coming this summer, we understand that our allies do not want to place them in their countries of NATO because it might lead to the escalation between NATO and Russia. For this reason, they are sending the systems to protect the airplanes. And also Ukrainian cities will be protected too. Netherlands, thank you for your awesome support. But the other countries like Slovakia, it's better to say not the countries but their governments in this case, because Slovakia is very friendly towards Ukraine. However, Fico and his party are ruining all of their relations with the Ukraine, and they started the investigation on the previous military management for the supplyment or delivery to Ukraine the Soviet-made MiG-29 fighter jets. A new defense minister even called the deal as a fraud, and he said that he couldn't find any sort of the documents during the audit of why those airplanes were supplied to Ukraine. Why and how? Because Ukraine just needs the fighter jets and Slovakia is the ally country for Ukraine. As simple as that. The new government of Slovakia is just crazy. Fico's friend Viktor Orban says that NATO will conduct the military action in Ukraine. He is sure about it, but Hungary will not take part in that escalation. He said that they will jump from the train that goes to the wrong direction and the driver of the train is unstoppable. Kind of the interesting comparison, so he's sure that NATO forces will be involved directly in the fight. Well, at the current stage of the war, I don't see it happening. Well, maybe Orban spoke about the limited military mission, for example, deploying instructors to Ukraine. We know that France is looking for it, as well as some of the Baltic countries like Estonia. And there are also some of the United States politicians who blame NATO for Russia to start the war against Ukraine. Well, Donald Trump just said about it. Let's listen to his speech.
Say you were running Russia, you wouldn't be too happy, and that's always been off the table. Let's say you were running Russia, you wouldn't be too happy, and that's always been off the table. It's a border. And it's always been, I don't think that they would have, if they thought that that was going to remain sort of a territory where you don't have NATO, but they don't want to have soldiers right on their border. They don't want to have it. It's always been understood, and that's even before Putin. It's always been understood that that was a no-no. And now you can go against their wishes, and it doesn't mean they're right when they say that. But that was very provocative. And now it's even more provocative. And they're talking about, I hear routinely, they're now talking about Ukraine entering NATO. And now I hear France wants to go in and fight. Well, I wish them a lot of luck. I think good luck.
So Donald Trump here basically accusing the alliance for provoking Russia to start a massive full-scale war against Ukraine. Trump isn't blaming Putin or the Russian regime or Russia itself. He blames NATO. It tells a lot about the next possible development vector of the Trump's policy if he somehow becomes the next United States president. Probably it's the most concerning part as for me. At this stage, it's not about Ukraine, but about collective security system between Europe and the United States. In his short speech, Trump disassembles from France saying, "Do what you want to do. We are not going to protect you because of your policy." But the policy of France is no red lines should be applied on the allies by themselves. Macron's rhetoric is the strategic uncertainty for Russia. That is how it should be, or would be if we were living in 80s, for example. By that time, everything was more than clear. But nowadays, I might say that the Western countries are not that united. After the Soviet Union collapsed, everyone just relaxed, but now Russia is a second Soviet Union, plus the Communist China, North Korea, Iran, so there are some of the countries which might form a new bloc of the enemies towards democratic countries. Well, actually that alliance has already been formed. Alright, just a couple of more remarks about NATO, which is provoking Russia. It is total nonsense. Russia isn't afraid of NATO. They understand that NATO will not strike Russia. They have no reason to do it. After all, Russia has nukes. No one wants to escalate. And as you already know, after the war had started, 2 new countries has joined the NATO alliance. Finland and Sweden. Finland increased the total border between Russia and NATO by 2 times. But somehow Russia is moving their forces out from the Finnish border to fight in Ukraine. Yes, their military bases, which are bordering Finland, are mostly empty. I showed you already the satellite images of that stuff in one of my recent videos. So does Putin afraid of NATO? No. It wasn't the reason for him to start the war against Ukraine. He just wants to control the ex-Soviet Republic, Ukraine, which was previously friendly to Russia. For him, as he says, there is no difference between Russia and Ukraine, so Ukrainians are now fighting for their identity because Ukrainians were enslaved by Russia for centuries actually. Ukrainians were always treated like second sort of the people in the Russian Empire, in the Soviet Union, and finally Ukraine gets its independence after hundreds of years. But Putin and the Russian regime is not okay with that. They want to provide their influence in Ukraine to put the puppet government to make a second Belarus, let's say, from Ukraine, to put nukes to Ukraine and threaten the Western countries of NATO at that point. For this reason, France is very concerned, but for Donald Trump, it looks like some sort of the regional conflict. And France overreacting on this situation, but actually, Donald, you are wrong. Is there any chance for Trump to just collapse NATO if he becomes the next United States president? Well, there is, but I think it's kind of small one. Because after all, it's not just the president's decision. The last night, Russia again launched their aerial strike on Ukraine, mostly targeting the western territories, including military airfields. As Ukraine reports, the attack on the military facilities failed, however, Russia hit some of the civilian infrastructure. Alright, and now let's go to the front lines update. Today, occupiers took Sumy under control. Before Ukraine was able to liberate this settlement, I think that it happened around half a year ago. But today Russians unfortunately performed a counterattack on this area. There is a big terracon, so the big artificial hail, and Russians just stormed this area. And there is also Torez, Druzhba, Pivnichna, and basically it's all one big settlement. And if we see the trend, Russia advances towards that area. It means that the east for them is more important than Kharkiv Oblast or Kharkiv region, and Russia is quite limited using their forces. That's why they want to concentrate on the east more, where they have already some sort of the success. So what was the reason to start a new Kharkiv operation? Well, maybe to deflect some of the forces, Ukrainian forces, to fight against Russia in Kharkiv. Also, Russia continued to expand their bridgehead near Ocheretino. Well, for today, they moved a little towards Sokil. Let's check out the timeline. So yesterday and today. Again, yesterday and today, just a little taking the small part of the field. We also know that Russia wants to get Chasiv Yar under their control in a nearby future. For that reason, they sent more reinforcements near Bakhmut, and they're getting ready for the massive strike to cross the river over here very fast. Otherwise, they could be trapped and demolished. At least we have the information from Ukrainian General Staff Command that Russia is getting ready for the strike. Well, it is good that Ukrainian command knows about it. One more Russian Zala surveillance drone was hit by Ukrainian FPV. Yes, Ukrainian FPV drones are now flying allowed for those kind of the missions. And the Russian Zala drones are unfortunately very effective. They're hard to detect and they may fly deep into Ukrainian territory. Because of the Zala drones, Ukraine lost many of the airplanes and vehicles, even HIMARS. Basically, those drones coordinate the Russian ballistic missiles Iskanders, which might fly for 700 kilometers and usually launch from the Russian side. I mean from their territory. I found this photo of the Russian army KAMAZ, and it seems like they start to put a new marking signs on their vehicles. They're getting more and more complicated from what I see. But yet we are not sure whether it's the marking sign of the army group or specific unit. Now I found this photo on the internet as well. It is some sort of the Russian equipment, kind of the strange one. They put those circles right in the field. The circles are big. The vehicle itself later on was demolished by Ukraine, but I'm out of clue of what is this. Is it some sort of the electronic warfare? Some say it's the sound system used to send the special waves like in Red Alert or something. Maybe you know something about it? Please write your comment under this video. The only clue I was able to find in the article dated from July 7th, 2018. They say that Russia copies United States' unique inflatable antenna system. And they have even the video of it. The guy in garage is producing this antenna or testing it. I'm out of clue, but definitely it is working. It can receive the TV signal. So maybe those antennas were made for Russians to watch TV? Yeah, we know that probably it was made to detect the signal from Ukrainian side. Radio communication, whatever. After Ukraine has declined all of the peace Russian proposals, on the Russian propaganda channels they start to say that Ukraine doesn't feel pain and Russia needs to push even further by escalating the war, by eliminating Ukrainian energy sector fully, by targeting bridges and dams, and after all, maybe using even tactical nukes. Yes, it is the Russian propaganda and they translate the thoughts of the Russian regime itself. Russia wants to force Ukraine for peace. They call it peace, but actually it's capitulation of Ukraine. At least they call it a peace, but it's the capitulation of Ukraine. Luckily, our allies are helping with their military support, especially with the air defense systems. A photo from Belgrade, delivery guy, usual stuff for the bordering Russian city. To some of the other news, Yemeni Houthis demonstrated the production of their drone boats, so they also learn on Ukrainian experience. I just wonder why some of the drone boats do have a steering wheel and power control. Well, they even show that the guy is running the boat. Alright, so it jumps from the boat before the impact. And that is what is left from the ship. It's just a target ship for the training. Well, I just wonder what happens with this drone boat operator who would float alone in the sea with nothing. Well, maybe he's there just for the drills, but at the same time, I don't see any sort of the antennas like you are able to see on Ukrainian drone boats. Those should be flat, rectangular type, as well as there is no any optics to control the boat remotely. So this guy here is mostly kamikaze, my friends. And now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.